My story dates back to 34 years ago, long time ago. Grew up in a rough neighborhood. Used to be around here in Memphis called Hurt Village, and it was one of the roughest neighborhood in Memphis, I would say. And I don't say that in a bragging way, but just kind of showing you how the area I grew up in. Come from a single family home, 5 sisters, 1 brother. Being in the household, and a lot went on with us. And single, like I said, mom trying to raise 7 kids by herself, $3-4 an hour back then, and cleaning and going places and working and earning money. Outside one day in this neighborhood playing basketball on the basketball court we had in the community. So this the place we went to play ball and hang out and just get to know people. A friend of mine and I was hanging out playing basketball, and like we said in the hood, the guy rolls up in a red pickup truck, or he drives up in a red pickup truck, and get this, on tailgate of that pickup truck, he had Jesus Saves on that pickup truck. And I didn't know what was going on at that time, so he kind of got out the truck, standing about 6 feet tall, waved us over with a gallon in his hand, got over there to the pickup truck, and he had some orange juice, and he had a box of donuts. And he said, the only way y'all can have some of these orange juice and donuts if you let me share something with you. So we hot, hungry, and tired. Man, you can tell us anything you want to tell us. I don't care what you talk about. We're just trying to get to these donuts and orange juice. And so little did I know, he shared the plan of salvation, which I didn't know then what all that meant. Plan of salvation. Also shared his testimony, and I gave my life to Christ that day on back of that pickup truck 34 years ago. And for me, it changed everything. So of course I had to go meet my mom and all that as a kid, and she allowed me to go and be a part of Soup Campbell. I think I forgot his name, but Soup Campbell was the guy who drove the pickup truck that day. And so my mom allowed me to go with Soup to, it was and I think I missed this earlier today, but that was my first time seeing a black African-American couple being in their home, eating at their table as a couple together as a young boy, with his family. And seeing marriage model at the age of 10 with his wife and his kids. Had never seen anything like that in my life. And so fast forward from 1990 to 1997, of course, Bible studies and groups I was a part of with Soup, and traveled to Kids Across America camp, done a lot of great things, just that mentor, that father figure in my life. And so in 1997, I decided that Jesus wasn't putting no money in my pocket, so I decided to hit the streets and start selling drugs, and life began to rapidly change for me then. So outside of my neighborhood one day, and gambling with this guy on the bebop porch is what we call it back in Hurt Village, and I'm talking smack to him, and we going back and forth, and I'm winning, and he pulled a 45 and put it to my head. The gun got jammed. He smacked me across the head with it. So fast forward, months after that, a couple years after that, I'm in this drug house, nowadays they call Trap House, and with these guys, and we kind of where we sold drugs at, and they kicked the door in, beat us up, left us for dead in the house. So fast forward 2003, I'm with a good friend of mine. We had been, drinking and smoking all day long and kicking it, doing what we do. And for some reason, I just got tired. I said, man, just drop me off at home. I'm tired, I don't feel well. So he dropped me off about 8 o'clock that night. I'm watching the breaking news, 10 o'clock news, and the co-anchor is saying this guy just got carjacked and killed, and that was my friend who just dropped me off 2 hours ago. So I know it was before the foundation with the word of God prepared my life to even be here to this day to share this with you all, and with you. And so that's 2003. So a few months after that, I ran into an old buddy of mine. He passed away, gone to be with the Lord as well. And I said, hey man, you still keep in touch with Soup? I need to get back in touch with Soup. A lot been going on with my life. So he said, yeah man. So he gave me Soup's number. I contacted Soup, found out Soup was living in Binghampton. Like, man, he in Hampton. I knew about the Binghampton back in the day, but he lived in Binghampton, got connected with Soup. And Soup was telling me about, this house that came available in Binghampton through the BDC, Binghampton Deveopment Corporation, my first house that I ever lived in, rented. And at the same time, he was talking to me about the Sunday school class that went to share about Eikon with, and they were looking to get involved, had just been to Argentina on a mission trip and saw the great work they was doing in Argentina and wanted to do it here in Memphis. I didn't know what he was talking about. I'm clueless of what he was talking about. So from that Friday evening, I went to the barbershop, got all my braids cut off my hair. It's kind of the style that I rocked back in the day. And the next day, I think it was Saturday morning, I'm sitting at McAllister's in Poplar Plaza with several different married couples that don't look, think, act, or vote like me, don't even know these people. I'm sitting there with them, and they just smiling and talking to me like we've been knowing each other for years. And that's what the love of Christ would do, right? And so we got to talking, and maybe a week too later came back to my house I lived in Binghampton. I didn't have any furniture, much of anything in the house. I just moved in. And so this whole class, it was Marriage 101 from Second Prayers, furnished my whole house. I didn't have nothing. And that began relationships even to this day that we have. So to fast forward, we began to pray maybe 2 months after that about what was next. The Lord was putting on my heart to do. And I just said, He put on my heart to do a children's ministry, work with kids here in this neighborhood. So we went back and forth on what to call it. Lived on Nathan Avenue, so why didn't just call it Nathan Street, fellowship. We had different names, but we called it Nathan Street Ministries to this day, Club Nathan, and we started September 2004, right after Labor Day. Started with 5 kids in their living room, and today, even last night, had about 60 kids. We meet weekly on Tuesday night, and we retell the gospel and different breakout groups, and I'll share more about that later on. So that's how I got here, the donuts and the orange juice, and I left my favorite part out. Soup told me 5 years ago that these donuts was some discount day-old donuts. So it took him 30 years to tell me some discount day-old donuts that he shared with me over 30-some years ago back in the pickup truck. But that got me where I am to this day. So that's why I'm here, married 5.5 years, wife 2-year-old, she'll be 3 next month. Got an 18-year-old, got a 22-year-old daughter. So,
Andy, Kizzee, my wife Susan, we've got 4 kids. We've been in and out of Memphis since 2007. So I was in college looking for a summer job. A buddy of mine told me about this ministry in Memphis that was like a summer camp, but instead of jumping on the blob and swimming in the lake all day, you roof houses. And so I was like, that sounds fine. So came down here, just kind of, didn't really know what to expect. My 3rd night in Memphis, heard a guy's testimony, and he was an architect, and he was preparing to move his family to India to design orphanages and Bible colleges and schools and things like that. And the Lord used his testimony very clearly. Is like, Andy, so at the time I was in school for engineering, and I wanted to design skyscrapers in downtown Chicago. And so the guy was like, forget that skyscrapers in downtown Chicago. That's what you need to do. So I was like, a young kid, nothing holding me back. Like, yeah, let's do it. So kind of readjusted my life's plans that night. Got married a couple years later, moved to Memphis for graduate school. Moved into the Heights, which kind of nearby Binghampton, with a bunch of other people, including Willie, who are intentionally choosing to live amongst in the same neighborhood with the families that they're trying to reach out to. So I wasn't doing that full time, but was just trying to make relationships with neighbors and inviting kids to church and coaching basketball teams and you name it. But with the plan of moving to India. I needed enough experience as an engineer to work with this organization. And so I was doing that for a few years and driving home from my job and heard a radio story on NPR one night about these guys in Nashville who are recycling mattresses, and the employees in this business are men coming out of the prison system. And similar to that testimony I heard about from that architect years before, God really used that story, that 2-minute story, to kind of kick off this spark, this idea about missional redemptive employment. And so anyways, we moved to India, worked for this organization that around the country and the region design facilities, architects and engineer designing facilities for Christian mission projects. Most of them like nonprofits, like mission hospitals, Bible colleges, schools, you name it. But a few of the organizations that we were working for were actually just businesses, and they call them business as mission. And so these are businesses that the whole purpose is to create quality employment opportunities and to share the gospel in relationship with employees and with the other people that you're doing business with. So we got to design a master plan for a 20-acre goat farm, got to help out with some businesses doing t-shirts and handicraft manufacturing in Calcutta, and just really kind of built on this seed that was planted a few years before about redemptive employment and the power of a good job. Howard sent out in that email. But if you've got a good job that's paying you enough wages, you might not need to have the discounted or the free medical care. Maybe you can afford insurance, so it'll cover your family's medical costs. Or you in India, you might not need the free private school. You could afford the tuition for for your kids to go to school and to do the after school tuition and all these things that get unlocked with a good job. And so kind of fast forward a little bit, our time in India was kind of drawing to a close. 4 kids in a little apartment in the city of 20 million people was not super sustainable for us. So we were looking for something to come back to Memphis to do. And my friend Noah Gray, who was the executive director of the BDC at the time, I was looking for something to do. And so we kind of came up with these ideas to, what else could we do in addition to mattress recycling? What other ideas are there out there that we could do in Binghampton in a warehouse setting to create low barrier to entry job training opportunities for Binghampton residents that are not currently in the workforce for one or another reason. And so as we were doing this research, Power Intel Corporation, who's operated an 80,000 square foot warehouse in the Binghampton neighborhood since the 60s, decided to move out to Piperton, and they asked the BDC if we had any ideas about what would be a good positive neighborhood use for the building. And we said, actually, we'd love to do it ourselves, and here's our vision. And so we, a year and a half ago, launched the BDC Business Hub, which is a full-time paid 40-hour-a-week job, but it's not a dead-end job. It's a transition job, and where we kind of come around and teach soft skills, teach financial literacy, allow people to learn habits and develop good habits around work while working, not necessarily while sitting around a classroom or talking about it. And so we do a bunch of different recycling activities, which I can get into later on, but it's a warehouse, do logistics operations, and then we do 4 different recycling projects, and we're aiming for about 20 trainees at a time. So that's what I'm doing.
So continue. You run it back on the work itself, what it is, and what's the most important thing about it.
Right. So it's 2023 with the economic climate the way it's at, 3% unemployment. If you want to work and you can work, you are already working. And so, but there's 30, or what is it? I should know this number. It's something like 30 to 40% of Binghampton households have no earned income. Yes, 33% of Binghampton households have no earned income. And so with 3% national unemployment, I don't know what it is in Memphis, but a lot of that's coming from neighborhoods like Binghampton. And so why aren't people working? Well, people aren't working because there's not incentive to work. Maybe they're on public assistance, and the jobs that are available to them that they can walk to because they don't have a car, and they didn't finish high school, flipping burgers or running a cash register at Kroger it's enough to get you not qualified for your public assistance anymore, but it's not enough to really live on. And so let's just keep going, keep hustling, scraping here and there, or maybe you've got skills, and maybe you have know how to work, or have worked before, or like work ethic has been modeled to you, or maybe it hasn't. But even if it hasn't, if you don't have a car, you could be the best welder in the city. If you don't have a car, you are not employed as a welder, because nobody's hiring you to weld stuff within a mile of your house. And so we kind of looked around and studied and understood what these common barriers to wanting to work or being able to work are. And we're intentionally designing this program to lower some of those barriers to incentivize work, to have people give it a shot. So we hire people at $12 an hour. It's a full-time job. 2 or 3 hours a week is spent in a classroom setting where we're teaching financial literacy, job soft skills, communication, things like that. And then the other 38 hours are out in the warehouse practicing those skills and putting them into practice. We do some assessments to find out what people not necessarily want to do, but what people, like how their brain is wired and what they would be good at based on how God's wired them, and then try to get them connected into, well, if you want to be a property maintenance technician, here's one option, or if you want to be a truck driver, here's how you do that, or if you want to go to college, here's how you do that. So that's kind of what we're building, and we're able to allow people the luxury of not having to choose between. So it's today. We had this kid who spent most of the morning at the DMV taking the driver's test for the second time, right? He wants to get into property maintenance, but he needs a car. He should have a license if he's going to be driving a car. So he got paid to go to the DMV for 2 hours. He failed the test, and so now he's getting paid to keep studying, and we'll take him back next week. Most jobs, that's not going to be, if you want to do that, you take your own time and do that. And it's people don't have the luxury of getting paid your 40 hours a week and taking steps to improve yourself so you can move on. So that's kind of what we're doing. So we do mattress recycling. We turn make bike lane barriers out of tires. If you've been on Broad Avenue this year, you've seen those. And then our big project on the recycling side is we're recycling every street light in the city of Memphis. So all 76,000, all the old lights, when they put new LEDs up, which they're currently started, they're down in Southwest Memphis right now. The old lights come to us, we disassemble them, and the money we're able to generate from the sales of the copper and the aluminum and the steel is going to allow us to hire about 14 people for the shipping and receiving for whoever wants us to do shipping and receiving for them. So that's what we're doing.
Okay. Several platforms we're using with what we do. One of our biggest is being Club Nathan. So it's a Tuesday night, I mentioned that earlier, Tuesday night safe haven for kids to come out, have a bunch of fun. You got kids running around. It's organized chaos is what I call it. And kids is running around having fun, ages 4 to 18 years old. Different volunteers come in from churches or individuals come in who support what we do. We have a calendar for the semester, so volunteers know when they're teaching and what area they're teaching in for that semester throughout the year, which helps out a lot. So we just follow the school year calendar, so kind of walking in that way. So kids get there, have fun up to about 5:51. We'll circle everybody up in the back, basketball court back there, and we dap up, we'll pray, have some type of icebreaker game just to kind of warm up for the night. And from there, we dismiss kids to their groups. All right, so if we're gonna retell the gospel, we have to retell it in a way where they understand it on their level. So we do breakout groups. So kids ages 4 to 9 years old boys and girls go into their own room, and their leaders are there teaching them that night. They're walking through the Jesus storybook and using that to retell the gospel through that Jesus storybook. And the girls, 10 to 18 years old, walking through girls in real life situations and using the gospel to walk with that. And the young men, 10 to 18, are walking through the armor of God. Ephesians 6, walking through the armor of God and what it means to walk in that and using the gospel to do that. And so Nathan Street, Club Nathan has been a recruiting pool for leaders to emerge. Had a young man to come to Christ last night for the first time. So when I left here this morning from speaking, the guy who spoke last night called me and said he wants to start discipling him. That's big, because now you got a kid that came to Christ. We're not just letting him dangle out there. No, he's going to take on a responsibility of begin to disciple this kid and walk with him. So that's been huge for years. And so another platform we use is basketball, Team Eikon basketball. So you got these platforms we're using to draw kids in, so they can be a part of something like Team Eikon or Club Nathan. But the whole goal is to share the gospel, is to be that mentor in their life, to invest into them. I've said this before, contact determines impact. the amount of contact you have with a person, the impact you have on their life. So we got that face-to-face contact is very, very important. And so using those platforms to share the gospel and build different relationships. We also have summer camp, summer jobs program that we have, and kids get opportunity to earn and learn, teach them how to cut grass, detail cars, work in the neighborhood, help raise their awareness in their own neighborhood, paying them to keep it clean for the summer, picking up trash and things like that. So these platforms have been great. But everything starts with a strategy, right? So we have one of our strategies we use is called a visible environment. So visibly, actively involved in the community, in the schools on a daily basis as a staff, finding out from those principals from Lester, Cornerstone, Brewster Elementary, what are some of your needs you have at the school? How can we serve? So using the opportunity to be visible in the schools, connect with parents and kids and invite them out to our programs. So we use that strategy for being visible in the community and schools like that. Yeah, I would say I think the mentor relationships are successful. When you if I can call on you, Gordon, your family have opportunity to mentor a young man. At Howard, y'all mentor a young man, and Jeffrey, you've been over at Club Nathan, you've been working, but those mentor relationships, that life on life, make it a success. Because now, we often say you able to provide something for a kid they probably would have never got, right, if they hadn't been a part of Club Nathan. So that mentor relationship goes a long way. Now they got access to certain things they would have never had. Maisha, I could say, we mentioned about her this morning, a young lady who came up through Club Nathan, was a kid running up that hill, up and down the hill, being a part of some Bible stories. She's now coming back on Tuesday nights, helping with kids. So that's success. But she has access to Matt and Minnie Gannon, who are, got great professions, but being able to walk with her, help her through school, and she wouldn't have had those things if she hadn't been a part of Club Nathan. So when you talk about success, you look at how it has benefited not all but some, and through mentorship, mentoring is key. Look at Jesus, right? He's focused on the 12, the disciples. He spent 85% of his time with those disciples, up close and personal with them. That's why we sit here today, if you are a born again believer of Jesus Christ, because the impact that he had on their lives. So mentoring and being intentional in the next generation of leaders equals success to me.
I don't fully know what's going to be like, how well this is going to work. We think it's going to work pretty well. We obviously know that there's people who, there's a lot of people who need to get plugged into livable wage careers. There's a lot of money flying around, for workforce development in this city and the state and probably around the country. Ford's coming to town. How many, like you guys have seen in the paper, heard like how many thousands of jobs is Ford creating, and who's going to fill those jobs? Is it going to be people who are can work up, or is it going to be people who Ford moves into town or into West Tennessee to do that? There's so many organizations who exist to upskill people their hard skills. You got More Tech, you've got Tennessee College of Applied Technology, you've got all the union apprenticeship programs. Any job, any big employer will just take. They don't care what hard skills they have. They'll teach them the hard skills they need to know. But all these employers, all these schools, there's all this money flying around, but like everybody needs more people. And what we've kind of learned is that it's a pipeline issue, and we like what's lacking. Well, what's lacking is like the reason that how Eikon is pouring into these kids' lives, because they're missing stuff that they don't get other places. They're not getting that at home, or they're not getting that at school, or they're not getting that at church. And the things that make someone a good employee are not necessarily taught things. They're things that are caught. And so people are missing the soft skills, the intangibles that would turn someone into a good employee at any job. And so what we think we're trying to, what we're trying to do is to teach a few of those at a basic level to get people started in this in a career, doesn't matter what it is, but to do it in a way that is gospel inspired, and that we use the gospel of Jesus Christ in the 2 hours a week curriculum that we're talking about, whether it's finances or whether it's these job soft skills. And we're planting a seed, and we're going to water that seed the other 38 hours of the week, and then we'll see what the Lord does with it, both from a job perspective and a career perspective, but also in a gospel response. Most people say they're associated with a church. Most people, in the South, everybody's a Christian. But when you really sit down and talk to people, the basic understanding of the real gospel is pretty lacking. And so to see people kind of understand that through a work context has been pretty powerful, and we'll see what it turns into.
Well, I mean, I've been in the community for a long time. When I first got there, I saw the bangers hanging on the corners and stuff like that, and I was able to go up to them and talk with them and say, hey, look, we here, and we're here for the long haul, in so many words, and you're going to see people that come on Nathan Street that ain't going to look like you, but that's going to be in this community, that's going to be caring enough about your community than you are. So when they come and they park their cars, you ain't going to touch it. So I've been a part of that. I've been able to go because you meet them where they are, and you earn the right to be heard, and people will listen to you, and they take what I say a whole different way because of relationships. So the last 5-10 years, you've really been seeing Binghampton begin to change. The property value is going up. I'm calling it Binghampton now because it's blinking over there. So it's going from Binghampton to Binghampton. You're seeing the houses change, and you see the great things that are happening, and the taxes are raising up. So you see good things happening, but you also got to think about some of the other people that's in the neighborhood. When you see these things happening and taxes are going up, if they're on a fixed income, they begin to get impacted. So now you got both sides working. So it's like, how do you come alongside and create programs like we was talking about the TILF program? You can explain more about that, to where you can help some of these families to where if their houses or something needs some repairs, they can qualify and get some repairs made, at no cost. You got, things like that. So you see the good, and I see the good and the bad happening for as the neighborhood changing, the community getting better, but also, again, some of the families people on fixed income, they can be impacted by that, right? Boots on the ground, I would say, is needed more. More men, women working in grounds and working in these schools and working in this community, sharing the gospel, coming alongside of what we're doing, needing that. God been able to, with us over the last year and a half, it's been great. The connection we got with Sprouts and Costco's and I think Kroger's, we get a certain amount of pounds of produce brought to us, dropped off monthly, and we're able to distribute that throughout the neighborhood. With the high grocery costs flying through the roof now, these produce and food that they get is able to help some of these families. And they walk away, these elderly ladies, men who come get this food, they walk away some in tears. And all that stuff is gone. We don't have nothing left but boxes to put to the street so the city can come get it the next day. But that stuff is gone. And that is when it's poverty there, and you can it's there, you can see it. It's there, and so this produce ministry and has been I get chills because we benefit from it. When I say we, I'm talking about us, a ministry. It's a bunch of it, and so I'm able to give my mom some of that who live a block over who need that. So it ain't just 10 people. This enough stuff to get a lot of folks in the neighborhood that can benefit from this. Prices are through the roof now, and this help these families. So just we may need more of that to continue to give out, but more boots on the ground workers, I would say, for us. Come alongside and help us do this ministry and go door to door or walk this community and try to find some of these needs to help these families. So
the BDC has been, we have affordable housing that we do. We've always done job training, as Willie mentioned, just kind of across the city, property values in neighborhoods like Binghampton, but Binghampton especially has been improving. We've had a grocery store built there. We've had the BDCs worked really hard to get a lot of the blighted apartments kind of torn down and redeveloped into something positive. And the neighborhood's on the rise. But if you're on, like you said, if you're on fixed income or if you're renting and your rent goes up, then you're finding a new neighborhood to live in. And so as we've been working on making Binghampton a more desirable place, we got to do something as well to the people who want to stay, who have always lived there, and to be able to raise their income ceiling as well, so that they can afford to stay there, whether it's taxes on a house that they own or rent in an apartment or a house that they're renting. And so the BDC is kind of working on making Binghampton a desirable neighborhood, but also keeping it affordable for people who have always lived there. That's a really complicated thing to do, and we're not fully succeeding in it. The housing market is a really powerful thing that one little organization can't do a whole lot against it. But we've hired 17 people, 5 of them out of a drug and alcohol rehab program, and all 5 have relapsed. So I think seeing them make a lot of progress. Obviously, we didn't know them before they came to work with us, but seeing them like in a pretty healthy place when they started working for us, and then kind of slowly degrade and relapse back into the old habits when things got hard, it was pretty, was sad, and we tried to do what we could to make it last, but at some level they just weren't ready, and they needed different kind of help than just we could provide as a job. So seeing that was tough. But if they get clean and want to come back, we'll hire them again. So I think there's always, we've got an aggressive rehiring policy. So we're trying something on. So here's what we do on the inbound side. So we do a drug test to hire people, and if they test positive for anything except for marijuana, we're not going to hire them. We're not equipped to can't handle that. But if they test positive for marijuana, we will hire them, assuming that they stop using, and we'll test them 30 or 40 days later, and they'll be working that whole time, but they won't be eligible for raises above $12 an hour. They won't be able to start learning like driving the forklift and doing some of the heavier equipment stuff. But we find it for people that are in that habit. For something that's becoming pretty widespread in a lot of different communities, not just in Binghampton, expecting it stays in your bloodstream 30 days. So if you're somebody who's not working and you're in the habit of using marijuana, and you're not sure you want to work, then what motivation do you have to stop using? You don't have a whole lot of motivation. So normally, I mean, if you're trying to work for employers that are going to test for that and not hire for that, you're going to have to stop using 30 days before you start applying for jobs. It just doesn't happen. And so we're trying to have this little tweak where we allow people to start, and then that gives them a reason to stop using, which has been pretty powerful. A lot of people have been able to pass that test 30 days later. And we give people one more shot. If they don't do it, so they can be there about 80 days, and then they'll get fired after that third positive test. So that's kind of one kind of tweak we're innovating with, and we'll see how it goes.
Man, I mean, you want to help everybody, but you can't. You only help so many people, and it's hard because, I think I missed sharing this earlier. I know that when I was a kid, coming home and seeing our furniture sitting inside of our fence because my mom couldn't afford the rent. I know what it's like to have lights turn off. I know what it's like to go without a meal. I've been through that. I wasn't born with a silver spoon. I know what it's like to wear regular clothes to school as long as they was clean. I know what it's like to get talked about. I mean, I can't say it because of camera, but dealing with a situation right now with a young man, and we're trying to help, but it's a situation at home that's not allowing it. So to even think about that's hard, and because you're trying to help too in that area, but it just the home is not allowing it for whatever reason, and you can't do too much about it. So that's hard. I
don't know the number that we're in, like the number of graduates, because you've got people who don't look like successes on paper. Like we've only had 3 graduates out of 17 people, 5 all these things. But the 3 of those 5 guys that relapse, like I'm in touch with, they're doing okay. They're working. You know, they'll give it another shot. Like that's a success. They look back on this program positively. We've got another guy who started came to us, didn't have his GED. You know, he was able to get his GED while he was with us. Wanted to do a certificate at Mortech. Started that. Really liked the electrical trade. So he's continuing to work at Mortech, and then he got hired on by a tenant who's like an electrical contractor who stores stuff in the building. And so he was back last week for 3 days organizing some of their stock, like being paid by them. You know, and so that's a huge success. And you know, if we get a quarter of the people who come through at that level, like that's super valuable. You know, it's going to be we're going to keep track of statistics for a lot of reasons, but you know, what's our target graduation rate, turnover rate, you know, increase? I don't know, but I know that whether they graduate or not, people are coming out of there with, you know, having made progress, having been paid whatever wage, having been exposed to the things they've been exposed to, and then the rest is in the Lord's hands, and that's okay.
When you go back with the guy who had the success and did that, and use him as a mentor, or at least show this. I mean, I was on the board of that cop. I mean, it's been 15 years ago, and it's the same type of. And they had this. The one fellow that was running it from a. He was. I mean, they all wanted to be like him. It's hard to get to him. Yeah. Right. But anyway, so.
Yeah, you can point to that person and say, So we'll see. Yeah, cool. I think what's maybe different about what we're trying to do, not different but unique, is that we're trying to teach these skills that not in a classroom setting. Lots of these organizations, and we're trying to do it while we're paying somebody 40 hours a week to be there, and we're trying to do it not based on donations. We're trying to, you know, this recycling project's going to bring in $600,000 of recycling of scrap sales, and you know that's going to fund our year. And so trying to build it to be sustainably and not on the ebbs and flows of granting organizations want to fund that year or things like that.
Yeah, I think you know, you will be what you see. You will become what you behold. What you do not see, you will not be. And the same will become a behold. And so when you look at my life and where I was years ago, and it's just like Jesus saw Simon and saw what he could become, right? God put a man in my life named Soup Campbell, and also men like Howard, Gordon, Wade, Andrew, Jefferson, other men that was in this room this morning who also has been mentored in my life. And I think that has helped me, and I know, excuse my language, I know it helped me to be in the position I am today as a leader. And I want to do the same for these other young guys that I'm working with, you know, to be their example for them, to lead by example, to, you know, show them something positive, you know, point them in the right direction, what it means to, we was talking about this morning, you know, if I don't want you to have to go take a man's life for $1 when I can teach you how to go and earn $1. You know what I'm saying? Now you've taught this person how to work and go get his own money to keep him out of trouble. So just being that example, pointing them in the right direction, you know, to help them be successful, because there's no success without successors.
That's kind of deep. On the housing side, I'm not equipped to speak on the housing side, but like we don't care if developers are mad. We've more work. Yeah, but on the warehousing side, we've targeted things that there's really no competition on, like, you know, these street lights, for example. If we weren't doing this, nobody else in Memphis was going to do this. A scrapyard, you know, there's 3 or 4 of them in town, was going to get all of them, and they might have a couple of guys out there separating a couple of pieces, but generally they were going to take one item where most of the value's in, and they were going to take that apart and they're going to put it in a container, and that gets exported to somewhere in Asia where some guys with 4-pound sledgehammers and flip-flops are going to bash it apart, right? It's not going to the landfill. Somebody's reclaiming that value. Or they're going to put the rest of it in $1 million or $2 million shredder, and this publicly traded scrap company is going to extract that value. So our pitch to the city was, let's not send $600,000 into all these different ways to these big companies, these exporters, all these things. Let's spend that on creating Binghampton jobs. That's a pretty easy sell, right? And so we're trying to solve problems for create value that no one's currently capturing or not taking full advantage of. Mattresses, for example. Republic Services operates both landfills. They hate dealing with mattresses, but there's no option for mattress recycling in Memphis, so they have to take them. They would love to have the landfill would love to have a mattress ban in the landfill. So we're talking to them about price these things like you hate them. So instead of charging $5 to throw them away, charge $50 to throw them away, or we'll take $15 to recycle it. So just kind of creating value like that and solving problems for companies and creating jobs with that value. I don't know, that's kind of how I think about what your question was.
I think I said this earlier, I think just boots on the ground. We can get more boots on the ground. And just be praying that, we're retelling the gospel weekly. Yes, had a little young man last night came to Christ, but even just praying for more kids to come to Christ and more disciple-making relationships begin to start and grow, mentoring relationship, more mentor relationship begin to be developed out of Club Nathan and Team Eikon and what we do through our programs. You will be what you see. You will become what you behold.
So like I mentioned a couple of times, we're trying to build this as much as we can, funded by revenue that we generate from our warehousing and our recycling activities. So if you know people who are companies who, just spread the word. Companies who need to do warehousing, logistics kind of projects, send them our way. And on the prayer side, I think, while we're not, sharing the gospel every week, like spelling it out, like we are planting seeds along the way, and just prayer that those seeds would grow, and that they would grow in people's hearts, and so that as people are putting themselves on a better track economically for them and their families, that they would their depth of knowledge of the gospel would grow as well.
We just come show up, come see it, come show up. And pray about how you can come. We know a lot going on in the city, right? But we can't run from it. We got to run towards it. And we got to be on mission. We all. My wife and I was talking about this last night. Mission is not what we do; it's who we is. That's how we say it. It's who we is, who we are. So we're always on mission. Yeah, things are going on in the city of Memphis, but we got to lock arms together and come alongside a ministry like BDC and Eikon and co-mentor one of these young men or young ladies and help them keep them out of trouble. And tell your friends about it. Get them involved, in helping us out because we need it. I can find a kid for them that they can partner with, and they can be a great resource to, and they can help change their kid's life. Like me, you're looking at one prime example 18 years later. Because, can something good come out of the hood? You better believe it. You're looking at one. Where did Jesus come from? He came from Nazareth. So think about the city of Nazareth, but Jesus came from that. So can anything good come out of the hood? Yes. So let's not look down too much on what's going on in the city, but how we can come along and help.
Fairly obscure, but people probably have heard about the gleaning laws, like in the Old Testament, how you weren't supposed to harvest your fields to the edges, and when your laborers went through to gather the crops, if they dropped some, they had to leave it, right? It did not say be 100% efficient, gather it all, and then when you get to the storehouse, take 10% and set it off to the side and let people come get it, right? There's a place for that. Not talking that, but the gleaning laws are so beautiful because they allowed the poor, the marginalized, to come alongside the hired hands in the field and the labor, or the owners of the field, to do the exact same work, the same dignifying, life-edifying work that of harvesting. The poor and the marginalized were allowed to do the same, and God provided from that. So I think that we're called to do that today. I think that we all need to be more creative in how we provide dignifying opportunities for people who have been disenfranchised. And these businesses that we're working with are choosing to do that. They're choosing to. They could let anybody recycle their stuff. They're letting us do it, and for us to glean alongside them. And I think we're all called to do that in our individual lives, in our businesses, and in anything that we're how we're deciding how people spend their time or money. So.